Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're going to be talking about today. This is my very, very favorite EDC personal folding knife, right? I'm not like that big of a fan of folding knives. I like these kind of fixed blades, This is another Pikal. This is from the Rivet Lock Pikal series. And I added some little serrations there, which really works with this design. I'm not a fan on serrations on any other knife type than Pikals, but yeah, so this is it. This is a hand-forged blade from 5160. It's hot forged and cold forged, just like the Japanese master bladesmiths do with their kitchen knives. I think what many people will be surprised to learn is that the Japanese master bladesmiths, they practice their techniques on 5160 steel because 5160 can pass through the exact same sort of the style of manufacturing than a lot of their other steels. So you'll be surprised. There's actually a lot of really high-end 5160 professional kitchen knives coming from Asia, and a lot of that is because the 5160 cold forges so well when you anneal it and cold forge it. And there's so, and the end result is you have an ultra tough. I mean, 5160 is like, it scores the highest out of almost any steel. I think there really aren't too many other options for a steel that is as tough as 5160. And, that's primarily why I use 5160 above, any other steels, really, is because unless you have a buukko, some basic Finnish buukko, and a buukko like this with a Scandi grind or some kind of chisel grind where you got like a long steep edge, then you're gonna need something maybe that's a bit more like a 115 CRV2, 115 CRV3, sorry. So like something like this, you don't really want to have spring steel for, because the whole point of this is for carving woods like you would with a high-end chisel. This is, it's a Scandi grind with so you kind of want to have a kitchen knife steel on something like this. But with most knives, you really want to go for maximum toughness, and that's what I like about 5160. And when you cold forge it, it has a huge amount of edge retention. It really holds quite well. So, really ultimately your heat treat, it comes down to, how you grind it afterwards, right? If you can have the perfect heat treat, but because you're grinding on your belt grinder without any water cooling, you're just going to burn the whole steel. You're going to embrittle it. A lot of Americans, they understand that gun barrels have a life expectancy, and that life expectancy is a measure of embrittlement. So when a bullet passes through that barrel, and with the hot gases behind it, you have this rapid heating of the upper surface, sort of like the micro surface. And so after the bullets pass through the barrel, the inside of the barrel, the surface where the rifling is and everything, it'll heat up really quickly and cool down very quickly. And that's called embrittlement. And that's what happens, for example, when people grind knives on a dry belt grinder and dip it in water and pull it out. You get a soft and brittle blade. And a lot of manufacturers actually do this. You'd be really surprised. And that's why you got to be careful buying custom knives from people. One of the most important questions you could ever have to a knife maker is, does your belt grinder have water cooling? Because that's actually in many ways more important than the heat treat itself, because it doesn't matter what heat treat you got if you're going to ruin the blade anyway later, embrittling it by dunking it in cold water. If there's steam coming off your blade, it's over 100 degrees, And if you go to Japan, a lot of these, like for example Takeda, I've met him in person and I've discussed his heat treating method, and we went into details on it. And one of the things he does after quenching is he'll rest the blades, de-stress at 80 degrees Celsius for about 24 hours or something like that in an oil barrel, in a bucket full of oil. And so already, at 80, 100 degrees, there's an effect on the steel. And that's like within the boiling point of water. So, water boils at 100 degrees, and that's the maximum temperature you would ever want your hardened steel to go up with. So the only way, and the reason I'm saying this is the only way you're ever gonna have a tip like that on a knife is if you have water cooling on your belt grinder. Now, the construction of this blade it's pretty simple. It's a stainless steel frame, so this frame here, that's all stainless steel. There's a scrapyard close by. I'm pretty good friends with the dude, and there's a facility somewhere that keeps changing their stainless steel tubes and their stainless steel pipes. So I go over there and grab it all up for myself, and that's why you see a lot of these rings at the front of the handle. This is a Pikal prototype. This is actually what the final design ought to look like, and this is a stainless steel ring. So, stainless steel rings like that are extremely expensive, very high quality, very, very, very tough stuff, and to be able to have it on here really makes the difference, and it's what allows me to really have a high performance folding knife. This is a friction folder. I personally don't see any point whatsoever in having a lock on this. It would just get in the way. So the way I carry this blade is around my neck like this, right? I have the string long enough so that I can put it around my neck while I'm wearing my hat, because this actually takes a lot of impact when I'm working on at the farm, at the ranch here. It actually saves me from a lot, like sunlight and rain and things falling off of shelves and whatever. And so that I like to wear this hat a lot because it really does help. So it's nice to have the string be able to go around your hat and your sunglasses or whatever without so you don't have to take it off just to put something on. And you see I have this lock here, and that lock doesn't stop me from opening the blade either. That I can just put right back in like this. So like that. It's very, very narrow, so you can carry it on your chest. You can go to town, whatever. Nobody can see it under your shirt because it's so narrow, so thin. That's actually one of the biggest reasons why I don't carry a folding knife, is because folding knives are actually, like, for me, they don't suit my EDC stealth carry. They just bulge out. Generally, folding knife handles are just too thick and heavy and big for me. But when it's like this, just a sheet metal, well, this is a tube. This is the corner piece of a tube, and you can actually just bend. If you have a tube bender, you can bend it, cut it, and then form it, and then forge your blade to fit in there really nicely. But yeah, so what happened when I take this off of my chest, right? I do this, and then I do this, right? I feel like adding a little knob there, some kind of rivet, so that it makes it slightly easier to open, but it doesn't bother me at all. See, I just do this and I'm done. So I can do it with one hand, and then I close it like this, and I put my thumb on the top of that, and then I slide this in, and it's done. So I don't need two hands to open this, Also, the thing with folding knives is, like, they're not ideal for, for, like, in America, for example, where you're allowed to have, self-defense weapons. I mean, if you're gonna carry a knife for self-defense, you're what are you doing looking at, like, small folding knives and stuff? I mean, like a real, a knife that, like, this is a self-defense knife. This is what you carry if you intend on having a knife for self-defense, right? You don't, like, why would you, like, if you're serious about using knives for defending yourself, then you get a fucking huge, clip point dagger. You know what I mean? And this is even more concealable than a lot of folding knives, the way I've designed this. But this I'll bring up later as I'm talking about this folding knife. So it's not at all intended for self-defense. In fact, the handle is quite slippery in many ways, but it's slippery and narrow. But this intense curvature actually allows you to hold on to this very, very, very firmly. And I've done a bunch of hacking. I've been hacking branches with this. I clear branches off the side of the road that are growing into the road so the cars don't hit them. I got a whole bunch of different types of mediums, like, you know, carcasses and foam mattresses and all these kind of different things, really thick moose leather. This stabs really, really nicely. It'll go through every layer of freaking clothing you got. If you want to puncture, you know, 1-inch thick leather, this is what your dagger got to look like. But yeah, it's a folding blade, so I don't know if it's, yeah, but yeah. And another thing about this that I really, really, really love, and you can see that, for example, here's a really clear difference. So this is a Layol folding knife with a stainless steel blade. This is the folding knife I carry. I mean, this is really, really, really awesome. I fucking love it so much. And they're only like $35, and you have all this, you know, if you asked an American knife maker to make you the exact same thing as this, they would say, I ain't doing that for less than $600. And you don't even know if they grind their steel on a dry belt grinder or on a wet one. So I don't even know with this. It's a manufacturer, so they should know to have water cooling on their belts. But this here, what's unique about this compared to, say, like a modern folding knife like this Booker, right, is that this after 20, 30, 40 years is still in perfect condition, whereas this, after a few weeks of having it outside the box and not using it, it's all falling apart and coming to pieces because it's all held together with threads. And I'm adamant about the fact, and this is after, you know, a decade of testing. I've made thousands and thousands of knives, and you know, threading, you don't want to see any threads whatsoever on a knife. You don't want to have scales, you know, unless, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? But for me personally, I need my scales to be held on with rivets, washers, right? So this is a thread at the back here, but that threading is so that when I put this handle on the blade, so this is a frame rat tail, right? And the frame and the moose antler, they all go into this ring here, so the forces can be distributed and there's no splitting or breaking in the front of the handle here. So that's actually something that people got to consider. But so I had a hole at the back of the frame, and then the rat tail goes through, and I have a threading here where I can screw the nut down. But the only purpose of that was to maximize, to compress the whole handle against the blade here, so that when I drill this hole through the whole thing and put this rivet in there, it's gonna stay that way. So that threading there is just to help me torque the handle against the guard and the blade so that this pin can do all the work. Because what happens with a frame handle, especially if you don't have at the back of the frame something that contacts the rat tail, if you just have a threading there, the threading buckles, it breaks. Most threading is not hardened steel, it's soft, and anything under 5 millimeters is too little for a knife, especially a Bowie knife. You don't want to see, maybe with kitchen knives is okay, but if you see a Bowie knife that's just held together with threading at the back, you might want to be careful with how you use it. That's all I'm saying. So, you know, that's why I don't use threads, because I know that once that rivet is there, it's never coming off. It's staying there for the next couple 100 years. And that's like a super bonus, super awesome thing about doing that on this Pikal, is that since I've made it and I've been using it every day, this is the only EDC folding knife I carry, and I carry it everywhere nonstop. I even put it, it's next to my bed when I'm sleeping. Yeah, it's all holding together. There's nothing's coming loose, So very, very, very strong. You may have noticed also that there's a rivet down here, and that's to actually, that rests against the bottom there to keep the edge off here, the inside, down the middle. So pretty awesome package. I do have, so there's 2 improvements I want to do on this personal concept here. One is to have another rivet up here so that there's something to catch onto. And then another one is here with this. As you can see, I've put some threading there, and that makes a big difference. But what I'm gonna do here, right, because as you can see, this actually fits really nicely in a pocket because it's so thin and narrow. So you can actually slide it like that in your pocket, and then just a little bit of this sticks out. So you just pull it out of your pocket from here. But what I wanna do is shape this so that it's like a clip, a pocket clip, right? So it'll come out a little bit this way, arc over, and then like that. So that, not much, probably not a big difference, but enough so that if you want to actually have it in a pocket, like with a pocket clip, it's actually there and it works as such. And then when you open it, also, I would like to have a slightly bit wider there. Just to add a little bit of dimensions, because it is, as you can see, ultra narrow. And when it comes to, yes, like, why is this my favorite knife? Like, why is this, right there at the top 1 or 2 blades? When it comes to the vast majority of tasks that we need with our knives, if you live in if you live in a city and you do a lot of administrative tasks, and you're talking about office space, the Pikal is superior, personally speaking, to other designs. When you're looking at something like this, this is super useful. But when, let's just like as a way of thinking, you can say that, let's just say there's like a 10 out of 10 scale, and a knife, a regular blade shape, right, like everybody is used to, that's decent at every task, right? It can do 10 out of 10 of those tasks. But 7 of those tasks, 7 out of 10, the Pikal is significantly better at doing. The problem is that those last 3 things, it can't do at all. So when you carry a Pikal, yeah, all the things that you're used to cutting, you're going to have a lot more fun cutting, and it's going to be a lot better. But then you're going to be limited because there's like a couple things that you literally it is impossible to do. And one of those things is cutting against a surface, right? So with a blade like this, I can very easily do that, right? But with a knife like this, if you start jamming it and grabbing into the ground like that, look how much metal there is on that tip. I mean, it'll handle it, but it's a very, very delicate tip, and you don't really want to overburden that tip by using it against hard surfaces like that and cutting into it. So if you're carrying a Pikal, you might also be forced to actually carry a regular sort of book or a regular kind of blade. Like this is an old, it's pretty used up. I got a bit of rust on there, but so what I carry next to this every now and then, I mean, I primarily carry this, but my other blade is a prototype that I made 5 years ago for a series that I'll be working on soon enough, and it's this utility karambit. And so with this, I can cut on the table very easily and do a whole bunch of stuff. As you can see, this string around the ring is extremely important. It saves your, if you have any experience whatsoever using knives that have like rings at the back like that, and you hit like super hard surfaces, like I like to punch shit like the walls and trees and stuff like that to test some of my knives. If you don't have a little bit of fabric there, you're gonna feel that metal dig right into your bone, and it's a pretty painful feeling, and it could knock you out of a fight. So I strongly recommend that you put some paracord around your ring there on your karambits and whatnot. But this is the one I've been working with. I have another prototype actually for this particular knife. Where did I put it? So this one, which is slightly different in dimensions, but this is also a metallurgical examination. This is a metallurgical test. I have some metallurgists that I've been talking to for a very long time, and we're doing some analyses. So this particular blade has been cold forged twice, hot forged to shape. This has been forged from just a regular round stock. I don't have a piece with me, but just a regular old round stock, and yeah, spring steel 5160, and it's hot forged to shape and then cold forged. That's why you see such a nice surface. But then it was like annealed, cold forged, and then I annealed and cold forged again on the behalf of a very, very talented metallurgist who's been helping me out over the years. He makes these extremely expensive stainless steel kitchen knives, and I tell you, on one kitchen knife he'll consume over 400 liters of water grinding it, using these because these stainless steels are the way they are. And so makes you wonder when you hear from some people like they have dry belt grinders and they're not drenched in water after spending a whole day on the belt grinder grinding hardened blades. But this is the other model. And then of course, if I had a clip point here, it would be pretty much a Pikal. It would cover all the bases. But not everybody likes to have an edge on both sides like this, because a lot of people like the idea of being able to impact the blade and batoning it, right? I baton with this. I just hit here, and I don't baton in the middle of a log. I work my way from outside in, so there's very little resistance when you're chopping those logs. And then also another major thing to consider is that if your logs don't have any knots in them, then you can actually like beat them pretty good. I mean, you could even baton this through some of those softer woods. So batoning is fine if you know how to avoid the things that will cause a breakage on your blade. But anyway, a lot of people don't like having a super sharp clip point, and because if you're cutting something like this, right? Let's see. If I'm cutting like this, you can see I'm already cutting into my finger, so it can be, you can cut yourself pretty easily when you have a massive clip point like that. But here what I mean is that I have both the clip point and the blade on this, so I don't need to carry this or this when I'm carrying this, because this does everything that any knife could do and more, because it's got that sharpened clip point. So this is two knives in one, and this is something that I think is a very interesting discussion topic about the traditional bowies, is that like when the traditional bowies, they were butcher's knives, basically, you could say. And this is what this is. I mean, this is much more of a kitchen knife than you would believe. I mean, I've gutted, slaughtered, skinned, God knows how many, 30, 40 animals with this. Sheep, deer, moose. And this is much faster for skinning than those tiny little shit knives that people bring to these hunting trips. Alone, me, I can do 3 deer by the time that, 2 or 3 guys can do 1 with all their little knives. But it's impossible to work on a carcass with other people if you have a blade like this. So if there's more than one of you on a carcass, you can't use this blade. You're just gonna end up I accidentally stabbed somebody in the finger about this fucking deep when we were skinning, I think it was a sheep or a deer, and the guys it's kind of embarrassing because this is a superior knife for that. I mean, that's what bowies were, in a way for, like, those people who did the who made a living selling furs and stuff. But that clip point, it's there, and that's basically your Pikal. you know, you're doing your cuts like this, whatever. Um, most, you know, most, more than half the cuts I do are on this clip point. And so I was, you know, before I even knew what a Pikal was, I was using clip points on my bowies. And that's actually where the story begins for the creation of this design here, this folding Pikal. So several years ago, a customer of mine, he was like, hey, can you make me a custom Pikal? And I was like, sure. What the is a Pikal? And I looked online and I was like, hey, you know what? This is pretty cool. This is actually like basically just a clip point on a blade, you know? So I ended up making a few prototypes, and every single Pikal I've ever made has sold within like 24 hours. I have never seen such a huge demand for Pikals. I've never seen such a huge demand for something that almost nobody in the specific realm of which that thing exists in, for example, the knife making, whatever, has such a huge demand. There's just a huge demand for something that almost nobody even knows exists or even how to make. So, I'll be giving you guys some hints about how to ensure that you get these beautiful curves and a beautiful tip like that when you're grinding on your belt grinder. You need your slack belt. You can't do it against a contact surface. Like, you can't do it with a platen behind. I mean, you can start there, but it's just not going to work. So anyway, one thing led to another, and then I started making these. This is the rivet lock Pikal. This one is number 100. It's my personal one. And I don't know a single knife design that where serrations work so good. Especially down at the heel. Usually when you have a knife and it's got serrations at the heel there, it's like the most useless freaking knife you could pick up from anything. You can't do anything with that knife. But when it's a Pikal like this, you know, I'm out here cutting rope, and, you know, like, hold on. Like, just look at this, right? Just stick it under. See, you're constantly pulling. It's like a hook. So you don't, and not only is it a hook, but because it's blunt behind, if you got all these tubes and fences held together by rope and you need to cut that string, you can jam the Pikal quite roughly into all these areas. And because it's the spine that's taking all the impact, you're not affecting the edge on your Pikal whatsoever. So you can actually dig pretty deep into hard stuff and move things around and jam the blade in there without doing any damage to the edge whatsoever, because the spine is the one that's kind of first leading into it. So the serrations there, man, they're great. Like, you can, when you're pulling a maybe string or fabric, you do that and it just comes right off. It's really, really cool. So I was thinking of adding those serrations like right here on this blade, but this is so hard to steel that I can't use the same files that you can use for filing hardened 5160. So it just doesn't work. It ruins the files. But and then I was thinking of doing it there, but this hasn't really proven to me that it needs them. But yeah, so I was making these for a while, selling them all over the place. I just thought, oh man, this is like so great. Out of nowhere, a whole brand new knife design that I can learn to master right there. And if you want, so the beauty, by the way, of this rivet lock is you can safely put your own paracord handle on there. You see, you can, and the sheath is not locked into the handle, right? It's like the most annoying thing ever when a Kydex sheath requires that it's locked into the. So here's one design that has it. This is an old one. This is made of M390 stainless. It's another EDC of mine, but it's cool. But I never use this because all the tasks, everything that I can do with this, this does like 10 times better. Even though this is a stainless ultra alloy super steel thing that you can go marine. This is marine grade steel. I mean, you can go diving with this. So, and it's very nice, light. This is significantly lighter too than the folding Pikal. But one thing that all these had in common, that's, yeah, with the sheath, this is 54 grams. So think about that for a second. And that's not even by trying to be weight reduction. If I had the right drill bits, I could drill through this steel like 4 holes and it would lose a few more grams, you know. So yeah, and then one thing led to another. This was great for me. I really liked it. I carried this around my neck for like a whole year. I mean, it was so great. For gardening, picking up, you know, those, yeah, literally like gardening, sheep work, I guess you could call it, like slaughtering, whatever, on a whole bunch of other stuff. But then after a while, I was at the scrapyard and I saw all these stainless steel tubes, and I saw a tube with a 90-degree bend like that, and I was thinking to myself, I had just a few weeks before I made like 100 and something of these style Japanese like folding knives, these friction folders. And so I had a lot of experience. I was really in the vibe, and I saw this 90-degree tube, and I was like, snap, there's a brilliant idea that probably nobody has done. And then within a day or two, I just went straight to work, and that's all I did. I just committed straight away, and I ended up with this. And at first I was like, man, this is a little weird blade. So I left it aside, and then I don't know what happened, but I just picked it up, and I haven't put it down. And this is like basically if I had to carry one knife, this is it, right? Although it can be annoying if I have to cut something on a surface, but you know, you can always do this, right? It's the same with food. You can just, instead of cutting from above, you can just cut from underneath, you know? So yeah, and part of the reason why this was awesome for me is, of course, you know, the handle is only a little bit, you know, you're adding a huge amount of blade and reach. It's a much more substantial knife. So that's, you know, the benefit of folding knives is that you can actually carry a much bigger blade for the same size. So but whether or not it's concealable, that's like a whole other thing, because it really depends on how narrow it is. I think how narrow a blade is more important than how wide or long it is, especially length. Width, you kind of have like a max. I think anything wider than that, anything that's wider than this becomes very difficult to carry concealed. And anything that's like bigger than this and wider than this is very difficult. Is going to be difficult to conceal. But anything within those parameters is pretty easy to conceal. Like this is a remarkably easy knife to conceal. Very easy knife to conceal. You just need like a jacket, you know. And a lot of folding knives that are much smaller than this are less concealable. This, in many ways, is less concealable because you don't really have a place for it. It doesn't have a sheath. It's just, when you fold it, it's just this round thing. So what's nice about that round shape is that it'll fit anywhere where pens go, but you can't put it in, you know, for example, if you put it in your pocket, it's kind of obvious there's something in your pocket, right? So, you know, when it comes to concealability, what contributes to it, you know, and how much you can get away with size, these are all very complicated questions that each have their own solutions, and sometimes it's very surprising what you can get away with when you think really hard about it. You see, that's just a demonstration of the rivet lock, just so that you see how effective that is. And it adds a little width and weight. This, by the way, if you're wondering, the balance is like there, somewhere there. So some people prefer out there, but this is not really a hacking blade. This is basically supposed to be a beefed up kitchen knife. So very good. And then, you know, so throughout that experience, from clip points to Pikals to this, and the name of this knife is the Raggedy Meander. The Raggedy Meander. With a stainless steel body, rivets, and a 5160 steel blade. So there's really not much more to it than that. It's really, I think it's again, it's one of these things where it's one of these knife designs that people are not really familiar with. Not too many people have ever tried, but once you do, it's actually like a really like a phenomenally great blade. And albeit though, it's, if you're gonna carry a Pikal, you are sort of forced to carry, you know, another knife that has a regular belly that you can cut with. Now, I could put a clip point here, and then I wouldn't need that, but I don't want to modify this old blade anyway. I'm gonna be doing that with this one, but these two are basically prototypes. I'm gonna be water cutting or laser cutting a huge batch of these that are a little bit different, but the blade is about that much wider, so a bit bigger and a bit longer, where that clip point will really do some good business. So this one is a bit chunkier. There's a bit more space to actually put a clip point. So on this one, I'll do it. And I was thinking I'd have some cast brass scales on the back that are full of skulls. So that's going to be cool. But yeah, so, you know, unless your knife has a clip point and a regular edge, you're kind of forced to carry two knives. I mean, you know, if you carry a blade that's just like this, you know, you can do all your tasks. This is perfectly fine. But if you're a bit of a connoisseur, then with knives, then you're probably gonna end up really enjoying this blade shape a lot more than most of the blade shapes that you're familiar with, especially when it comes to folding knives. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, if when it comes to cutting stuff, it's, when you have a regular blade shape, it's, you know, it's a little bit more difficult to actually grab, do administrative stuff casually. You know, when you got a blade like this, it digs in without trying, right? It just digs in like that. It just digs in, whereas this, you know, well, okay, it cut it. I'm trying to prove a point, but it's one of those things. It's when you do it every day, all the time, you notice it. It's these little nuances that are difficult to replicate because it's not really in the moment. But this doesn't grab, right? You're not having a grabbing effect like a claw is, like this. This you can pull towards you, right? Whether it's a string. So this Pikal shape is really strong if you don't want to use your other hand at all during the entire process of performing that task, because what you would normally use your other hand for, this natural shape is there to hang on to the thing, right? So if it's a string or whatever, so there is a very natural, very natural effect of a blade like this when cutting and performance. And another thing, I did this in a previous video. I'm not going to do it again. I ran the edge of this knife on some kitchen knife steel, some hardened kitchen knife steel, to make it dull, to show you how, even when it's completely dull, a blade like this just shears through paper because of this natural curvature, this inward curvature. You don't even really need the blade to be sharp. As long as this is super pointy, you don't really even need the blade to be sharp. In fact, you could even have it so that light shines off where the edge is supposed to be, and it'll still lacerate like that on most materials, and that's especially like paper and cardboard and stuff like that. So there's like an amplification effect on the edge for it being that shape, which I think is fascinating. And if you look, for example, inside cat's claws, what you'll see, and it's super interesting, it's basically two single beveled Pikals next to each other whose tips conjoin at the tip. So when you look at a cat's claw and you look at it on the inside and the outside, what you see on the inside, right? I just flipped the blades on the inwards, so the claw, this is basically what the claws are. It's two single beveled Pikals. These are double beveled Pikals. I got some single beveled Pikals laying around. They're freaking amazing. Honestly, when it comes to maximum performance on a blade like this, a single bevel is insane. My next one like this might be a single bevel actually, but yeah, and it kind of makes you think. Nature's perfect claw is two single beveled Pikals whose tips meet in the middle, you know, and those claws, they shear through things, but they're not sharp on the inside. They're extremely pointy, but they're actually kind of rounded on the inside. So that makes you think. It's something to think about and something to look into, really. It's very fascinating and interesting stuff. So here it is. And then the nice thing about the plastic clip-on here, right, that I have is that it actually kind of acts as a pommel now that I got a little wedge there. So that's pretty cool, you know. It's kind of cool. I can just hold on to it like that. So it works, you know, with or without without being clipped. And this is just a basic piece of paracord, you know. So one of my best products. I'm really proud of this one. I really like it. It's a lot of fun and it's quite simple. And it makes you, you know, really think about like a lot of designs, and it makes you think a lot about, you know, the potential for different knives. There's one question that this has raised for me is like, for example, why don't OTF out the front opening knives, why are they all like sharp just on one side, you know, or maybe not all of them. I haven't looked that deep into those, but that's imagine this with an OTF version of this. Is it even possible, actually? Yeah, the blade would be the other way around, actually, which would be weird. But I think what I would love to see from those OTF manufacturers, no joke, but it's a blade that's bottom is completely straight with a small curve and then massive clip point. An OTF is basically a folding knife that can be sharp on both sides. That's huge. That's massive potential. So I would love to see that. I'm gonna do a custom order someday from some of those guys when I get some money, but to do just that. But this is the, you know, a long video, I understand. And if you're interested in these, right now I make them for about 300 euros each. And I've done them so that there's a ring at the back. I'll forge a ring, so some of them can have a ring back there. That's pretty cool. You'll see in some pictures I have online. You can see here I've added those. They're a little rough, but this helps a lot with opening the blade against your shirt like this. You know, it doesn't slide. So yeah. Let me just quickly measure how thick this is, like at the widest point, because, you know, it is really quite narrow, and when it's narrow like this, it makes a big difference in concealability. 7 millimeters at the thickest point. Not bad, not bad. And that's, you know, that's when it's folded over the scale. So the blade itself at the thickest point, somewhere here, is 4 millimeters. So that's pretty decent. There isn't much battery left on this, so I'm just gonna go straight to this manufacturing. So really one of the key aspects of this design, how it works so well, is that the cross section of this blade, right? The cross section is is when you look at it from the front and cut, right? And the cross section of this blade is like a diamond, right? So when I'm cold forging these, to get the curvature perfect, I'll forge from the spine in to increase the curvature in, or I'll flip the blade and I'll cold forge the inside to bring the blade out. And by doing that, you create a diamond cross section, which you can see, for example, on this buco, right? Where the spine is in. And I do that with most designs because it ensures a super clean grind like this. But the beauty of that is, now that this has a diamond cross section, the thickest part is actually The thickest part of this blade is not the spine, but it's right there in the conjunction where the metal is here. Now, why that's important is because when you look at the cross section of the frame, it's just a V all the way to the bottom, right? So as you open this, the bottom of the diamond shape of the cross section of the blade is actually quite smooth, easy, and then right at this last point, that thick part is trying to jam itself into here, which is like the bottom of the V, right? It's like that down there. So it's trying to be forced apart, right? So when you open that blade and that diamond cross section pushes into the bottom, it wants to push out that bottom there. And this is stainless spring steel. This is stainless tube steel from industry. Very, very, very tough stuff. And so it's constantly resisting that deformation from the bottom there, which is why this rivet there is also extremely important, because it's trying to prevent adding strength to that flex at the bottom. So when I open this, see, now it's a little tougher. It's trying to get in there. It's trying to get in there, and voila. So the last stretch here, that stretch, there's added friction because the geometries are working against each other which adds friction. It's basically a friction lock. So it's a friction folding blade with a friction lock, right? I hope you understood that, because that made this design significantly better and smoother in operation, and really, really quite nice to use. So yeah, I've been hacking branches with this and stuff, and there's no play, nothing. If you're wondering what these rivets are made of, it's actually a brazing material, brazing brass. So it's done totally well. There's nothing wrong with it. It was 4 millimeters, I think. And then I put a washer underneath. So that washer underneath the riveting is super important if you want to have a flush, good fit. So another thing right before the battery dies, this is also super important. It's how you grind this. It's how you actually grind this. So let's be quick here. Never ever drag the tip over your grinding surface. That tip, if you go like this and drag it over the stone, that tip will eat itself inwards from the outside, and you're going to have a rounded tip. And I've seen that a lot with a lot of clip points and a lot of these Pikals. People don't know how to sharpen them, and what happens is that they eat away that tip, and then the whole thing looks like a shit. And so the way you avoid that is by never, ever, ever dragging that tip over your stone. So here, I go like this, and unfortunately, well, I mean, I guess you could go towards you, but with the Pikal, I noticed the easiest thing to do is to push away from you, like this. And you see I'm using the corner of the stone, I'm not using the flat of the stone, which is very important for the Pikal. So I'm dragging it away, and as soon as the tip reaches the stone, I pull it off, and I don't go over the. I do not touch the tip. It doesn't need to be. It's just sharp. It just has to be pointy, and by not dragging that tip over the stone, it'll stay super, super pointy. Now, as you can see, on the back end here, I have a canted sharpening surface, which allows me to, on the stone, with my right hand, I can drag like this. And that's to hone that tip in. So, like this. So after a good sharpening sesh, you want to fix that tip up, you can sharpen it there. And that's the way you do it. When it comes to the belt grinder, I have the water basically pouring straight on top of it, and as the belt goes this way towards your direction, right? We got that slack belt, you're pulling it, and then you do not drag that tip over the belt. Just keep doing that, and then you flip it over, and you're good to go. So it is a convex Scandi grind with a micro edge. I mean, it's not like the sharpest blade. Okay, it shaves. So it's definitely like 7 out of 10 sharpness, but when it comes to the Pikal, it's kind of an odd blade because that shape makes the edge, it's different. It feels different. It can be razor sharp, but you gotta use your fingers slightly differently to really sense it the same way. I mean, this is actually super, super good edge. Yeah, it's I would say it's pretty good, yeah. I mean, I just drew it over the stone a couple times. So, but is it even? Yeah. It's okay. It's a funny shape, but it's pretty sharp. And for, it's 5160. A lot of people are, oh, it's poor edge retention, but if you look at a lot of tests, 80 CRV2, which is a pretty popular steel out there, has pretty much the same edge retention as 5160. And I don't think those comparisons were made with cold forged 5160 or cold forged 80 CRV2, but either way, I'll always go for toughness over hardness, unless it's a chisel or something that's designed to like do some fine woodwork and stuff like that, right? I have a whole, actually, the batch of these that are being laser cut the first batch will be 80 CRV 2, but I'd like to have in the future, I'm working on towards stainless, but so guys, this is super cool, very nice knife. I think more people should try making something like this and testing it for themselves. And I gave you guys a huge amount of information in this video, actually, that will be really useful for y'all. So, the Raggedy Meander by Hot Metal Knives. Here, one of those super American things. How aligned is it? How aligned? Well, it's not so aligned anymore because I smashed this into a 1-inch branch. But you gotta test your own products, you gotta abuse them. So one thing why I love this blade so much is because it's a folding knife. It's a folding neck knife, right? And look how concealed it is. It's pretty good. The only thing that kind of sticks out is, of course, that. But if you suck in even like 1%, it doesn't stick out at all. So, very, very nice. And you can either go from under your shirt to pull it out, right? Or you can go from over, of course. So, this is cool stuff. The Raggedy Meander. You can find more of my content on Instagram, hot_metal_knives. I do have a website, hotmetalknives.com, but I'm always sold out, so whatever you find on there, it's what's on there for sale. But there's a huge amount of products that I'm always working on. So good to keep an eye out, because you'll see something you really like, maybe some type of Sanmai rivet lock bulk or like this, it might which might be like really up your alley, or something like this, stainless steels, carbon steels, forged, stock removal. I mean, this is, I think anybody here who does metal work and forging will understand that this is not amateur work whatsoever. This is actually very, very, very high skill work. So the forging is, always excellent. Here's a Giotto full steel Sanmai. So I don't know if you can see Sanmai. This is 115 CRV 3 steel in the core. And the cool thing with this is that this has been forged in a corner iron, so you won't see the Sanmai you won't see the steel down the middle, because the upper like centimeter of this is actually iron, of the whole spine. And the whole handle is also iron. So the steel actually starts like right there and goes all the way out there. So you can actually drill holes in this tang, even though the whole blade has been hardened, and it's a really, really hard tool steel. So here's a pretty nice Giotto. Albeit this one's maybe a little thick for some people, but you know, iron, sanmai, iron, hand forged, hot forged, cold forged, Giotto. Let's see. Here's another blade, for example. See, this is a 832 layer full tang, and you can see the Damascus there. It starts right there. The whole handle is iron, so the steel is only, the Damascus steel actually starts there. Same here. So it's very, very nice, cool three-dimensional features. Usually when knives are designed or made, they're kind of made to with just a two-dimensional, so all the features are on the sides, right? But quite rarely do you see this sort of three-dimensional stuff, right? Like this. This has been in a Finnish museum for a year. This has actually been kind of all over the country. And here is a leukku, traditional leukku, with a very eccentric handle. And this was just a show of skill, you know, to show people that you don't have to, you know, glue everything on a finish. You don't have to glue a whole bunch of shitty raw materials onto a finished knife and then spend the whole day doing a contact wheel handle and then claim it's like, you know, master artisan work. This is a bit more refined and experimental, and it's like the most comfortable thing ever. It's really, really, really interesting grip. It really kind of stays in there. Very, very cool. This is hand forged as well. Very cool looking blade. I don't have a sheath for it just yet. Here's another blade with a rivet lock buckle. This is an ultra. This is what's it called? It's a stainless super alloy steel, and this handle here. So, and I also got a rivet lock on there, so that on the sheath, you can, when you're at work, it clips in and you know it's safe in there and you can pull it out and work with it. And as you can see, this handle there, you have a translucent structure where the dowel can be seen from the outside. And this core, it's not just stacked, it's machined in such a way that it's actually, that this front is a cap over this to keep all the layers together, as with this. So this isn't just here, this actually is machined in such a way that it goes inside this piece of here and inside this piece here to prevent any warping or splitting in any direction. It's got the stainless steel ring here and bolster there. So very, very high-end work. And all this curly birch on here, it all grows in the plantation we have out there. All those trees over there, not this tree in front of us, but all those are curly birch trees we planted 20 years ago that I make kitchen knife handles out of. There's another example of the kind of kitchen knives that I make. This one's in for a service, also stainless steel. So hand forged Damascus, spring steels, super alloy stainless steels. You know, you'll find them all here, but you just have to follow my work and keep in touch. Here's a rivet lock buukko. So again, one of my favorite designs. It's a simple EDC rivet lock buukko. And they do come in sanmai versions too. Full steel karambits. I'm quite good with those. So, and of course, you know, very, very fine Bowie knives like this. I started making knives when I was 11 years old. I don't think even YouTube existed back then. The only knife making information that was around was Wayne Goddard's $50 knife shop, and since then I've made a a few thousand knives. You know, all sorts of stuff, many series. Here's a pretty cool blade. So the whole package is out there. And if you're really interested to learn more, of course, follow me. I'm full of information. I love sharing what I know. Because, you know, do you really want to spend 6 years to figure out something that I can tell you in 10 seconds? You know? And I don't know everything either, of course, and I would love to learn more. And there's always somebody out there who knows more than you, and there's always somebody out there who knows less than you. And the reason we have networking is so that we can all come together and turn all that into one big super brain of awesomeness, where we can all persist and conquer and just be awesome together. So, you know, back in the old days, 200 years ago, if you wanted to build a house, you needed all your friends, you needed the blacksmiths, the axe makers, everybody had to come together. Everybody's skills were important. And it's always going to be that way, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why the most important thing in the world is respect towards one another. And I hope you have a good day.